Hello again. How are you? In this episode, we are going to discuss something about how to manage a meeting. I'm talking about how to interrupt someone, how to change the topic, how to back on track, or how to notify that someone is on a sidetrack. So let's dive into it. Um, you know, Sometimes we need to keep the discussion on track or something like that. We need to, for example, say something, but in another way, in another side, sometimes we want to change the topic. Uh, we use some phrases like that reminds me. For example, this phrase is a link what we have just said to change the discussion. It's a good connector, yeah, and we're going to the sidetrack, okay? So the other phrase that we are use to continue from what we are interrupted. So, for example, if we're talking about book, and I can say, so yes, speaking of a book, that reminds me to a cooking book, and after that I'm talking about cooking, and the first person can say, so as I was saying, she started again talking about book. So he continued from where he or she was interrupted. And the next thing is we can other ways of saying that reminds me. We can say, speaking of blah 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 blah. For example, in our example, speaking of a book, I, for example, read some, for example, cooking books, and I started talking about cooking. The first issue is book. The second issue is cooking and cook. So here are some of the ways that we to keep discussion on track. For example, we are interrupted. We went to the sidetrack, so we want to back on track. The first thing, I can see what you're saying, but let's try to keep to the agenda. Keep to the agenda. We use this phrase to back on track, keep on track, sorry. To save time, we need to stay on track. Stay on track. Yeah? Let's try not to get too far off topic. The third one. Let's get back to that later. For now, I really want to stick to the agenda. Stick to something, yeah, and to remain and don't go to the sidetrack, yeah. The fourth one, that's an interesting point, but let's talk about that when we come to it. Can we get back to that? Can we get back to the main point? Get back to something, yeah. We use these phrasal verbs mostly when we want to keep on track or alarming someone, the interrupter, that we don't feel good as we are interrupted or the issue is being interrupted. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so I suggest do our best to stay on track. Stay on track. Keep on track. Get back to the main point, yeah, and stick to something. These are all the phrasal verbs and phrases that we can use to keep on track. Yes. And sometimes there's a situation in managing a meeting to widen our discussion and bring the other people into discussion and hear different points of view. Simply, we can say, what do others think? Here are other ways that we can do this. What other approaches are there to this problem? Does anybody have any ideas? Or how about other people? Any comments? Let's go around the table and get reactions to the idea. We will discuss go around the table at the end of this episode. Who would you like to begin? Who would like to begin? Are there any other ways to think about this? Okay. Sometimes we intentionally want to transit a presentation. Change the topic somehow. Here are the ways. But it's not an interruption. When we want to completely change the topic and talk about another issue. For example, here are the ways. Good. I'd say that's about all for that topic. No, let's turn to the issue of sales. Or, well, we've just about covered the San Francisco office. Let's continue by discussing Buenos Aires. And the last one, time is pressing. Let's leave that there and move on to the next point on the agenda, okay? And the last thing is, if we want to check, there are sometimes we want to check everyone agrees in order to reach a decision. So we need to go around the table. That means to take a vote, simply put, means take a vote. So there are two types of persons. Some ones are in favor, that's they are agree with the idea that's being voted, or some are against. So here are the ways that we go around the table. First, can I get a quick show of hands? Get a quick show of hands. Get show of hands. Yeah. All those in favor, raise your hand. Yeah. Let's take a vote. How many people are there for this idea? All in favor. Against? Thanks. Just quickly, is there anyone else that support this strategy of reducing overhead? Please raise your hand. Okay, I think that's all about it for now for this episode. I hope you enjoy it and it should be helpful for you. So see you in the next video.